Hey guys, Lotus Streams here, coming at you with another review, and this time we got part 2 of the Death Guard review. I'm going to talk about the units per se, which are or which are not, or did get changed in the Codex from the Index and the Chaos Demons Codex, or in this case, Index. So for example, we have units unchanged here, like Typhus, Terminator, Chaos Lord. They might have new models and something like this, but everything that is on this list here is unchanged. The only thing that we could talk about is the Terminator, Chaos Lord, Sorcerer, and whatnot did get point decreases in the Chaos Space Marine Codex, and as such, they already had them before, but if you didn't know about it or if you haven't seen my FAQ video, the points are exactly the same. There's no changes here to the FAQ'd ones, so we have the updated version of the CSM stuff in here as well, which is nice. Also keep in mind that on this list there's a few stuff that is not changed and as such is not even in the codex, but we will talk about this once we have the bigger picture. Units changed, there's a few one. Demon Prince of Nurgle gains disgustingly resilient because he is part of Nurgle and he's a Nurgle and he's demon. The Lord of Contagion is cheaper and got a Man Reaper option, but other than this unchanged. The Chaos Lord and the Sorcerer both have Blight Grenades instead of Frag and cannot take any jump packs, going with the slow Nurgle theme. The Plague Marines have new war gear, in quotation marks new, because in the CSM Codex they already got updated, and also their point cost got updated with the FAQ to 19 points. And they are troops, which is something that got updated as well in the FAQ. So essentially nothing new here, but there is a bunch of new war gear for them, which changes their role even more, that you can take melee and ranged weapon builds as wherever you like. It's fine. Alright, then included in this codex are a bunch of demon units, as you already saw, and the Beast of Nurgle did got included, and they have now 5 wounds and otherwise are unchanged, so a straight up buff to Beast of Nurgle. Now note that this does not mean that any Nurgle demon unit that is not necessarily Death Guard does not get the Death Guard tag. So if you want to run a Death Guard army, they're still not included, which I found a little bit sad, but it makes sense in the end because you would have to restrict a bunch of special rules to Death Guard Astartes or something like this. So these guys are still only Chaos Demons Nurgle. That's the keywords they have. Plague Drones got a huge buff as well. They lost 10 points, which is really good, and they increased their wounds to 4. So these guys are now a little bit tougher and cheaper for sure. Because Plague Drones have one problem: they are very, very expensive, and while they are tough, they're not as tough as they used to be because they lost Shrouded. And I think it's a good change, and it's obviously something they will change in the Demon Codex as well, because it is a updated entry, and you can use these guys for now. So this is also buffs for Demon players. And then the furred bloat drone got a freaking moan lower. It's called a flesh mower that he can put on the model with strength +2, AP2, damage 2, and plague weapon. You get 6 additional attacks with this weapon. And that's a pretty big one because furred bloat drones used to be ranged. They also have the heavy blight launcher option as well as a new one. But other than this, the unit itself is still fast attack, is still same wounds, has still all the normal option that you used to have in the index as well. So this is a unit that was existent before. Alright, and then last not but least, you see there is a bunch of stuff here that's unchanged. There's a bunch of stuff that changed, and then there's a bunch of stuff that you don't even see. That is bikers, for example. That is all Khorne and whatnot related units, demon wise as well as Chaos Space Marine wise. That is bikers because they're apparently very slow, so you can't take any bikers. Havocs I found really funny because Havocs and bikers both were units that were really good in the 7th edition, and I have no idea why they removed them, but apparently if you build a tough biker list or Havoc list, you are essentially screwed because you can't take them at all in the Death Guard army. You can just ally them in as normal Chaos Space Marines and they wouldn't get any additional benefit. So that's actually really funny. Not to them that have the army, but it's funny why they didn't include them. I have no idea why exactly. And then there's new ones, obviously. This is what it's all about. And essentially, I can tell you, new ones is not essentially new ones. It's the same that they did to the Grey Knights. They added a bunch of new units and called them something. But it's not that many new units in general. It's just a bunch of HQs and support choices. But then again, we have Mortarion coming up, and I think that's plenty of new units in himself. Alright, first one is the Foul Blightspawn, 77 points, elite choice character. Moves 5, so slow as everybody. Weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 3, normal. Strength 4, toughness 5, so nice. 4 wounds, 3 attacks, leadership A, 3+ save. And that is basically a very common profile for lower tier Death Guard HQ replacements in the elite slot. So he has Death to the Fall Emperors and disgustingly resilient, which makes him a pretty tough model to kill. And he also has Death Head, which is an ability that grants somebody a 2d6 grenade. So keep an eye open for all the grenades that you can see, because Blight grenades and Hyper Blight grenades and whatnot can get buffed by this. It's actually really funny that you can do this. So you can essentially lend people grenades, which was never seen before. But it's something that he gets. And then charging enemies within 7 do not get the bonus of going first and everything, even if they are Slanesh and whatnot that allows them to do so. They just get in the normal order of things that everybody gets to choose one and the other one gets to choose one and whatnot. So that's actually really nice, because obviously you are slow. Being slow means you're more likely to get charged, and that means getting charged can kill off a lot of your guys before you get to strike. So this is actually a good one if you want to protect your melee guys that are even slower than the normal ones, for example Terminators, and try to save them the problem that they can't even attack before they die. Then he has a range 9 and assault d6, strength 2d6, AP 3, d3, plague weapon, not d3, damage 3 plague weapon auto hitting. So it's like a super flamethrower something. The strength is obviously a little bit because it's 2d6, but on average you're getting a pretty good strength value. And I mean, AP 3 damage each is pretty sick. That's actually something that you could attack tanks with if you're rolling nice on the other ones. And obviously this is a good weapon for Overwatch as well, because it is a flamer and whatnot, and it has a very nasty profile even against tough melee opponents. So by with an invalid save you will probably die. I like the model, it's interesting. He's not too expensive for a support unit, and if you want to go heavy on the melee type of things, I think he's worth the points, just including them here to give the charging debuff. And then he has some funny stuff and some good war gear in himself, in addition to being a character, so he doesn't get sniped off very easily. Pretty solid choice, I think. Next one is the Biologus Putrifier, another single guy, 74 points, so also not that expensive. Pretty much the same profile, but obviously different war gear and things you can do with him. He has a plague knife and a hyper plague grenade, which is range 6, grenade d6, strength 4, AP 0, damage 2, and plague weapon. And on 6s to wound you get additional mortal wounds on the guys. So that's pretty nice. A hyper plague grenade is not bad. It synergizes with the guy before of letting you throw 2 of them, essentially. And he has a funny thing, which is exploding upon death, and a 4+ units within 7 take mortal wounds unless they are Nurgle. So he is essentially like a little vehicle in himself. And why would you kill him is the idea. You can increase the strength and damage by 1 of all Blight Grenades carried by Death Guard units within 3 inches, and 6s cause mortal wounds. So essentially he gives hence hyper plague grenades out to everybody within 3 and gives them the same abilities, which is actually interesting. So we have one guy that allows you to throw more of them, and we have one guy that allows you to throw better grenades, which is interesting because grenades never were really a big deal. And remember, we have that stratagem that allows everybody to throw frag, or in this case not frag, like bright grenades and hyper versions of them as well, because they're buffed by this. So you have a synergistic effect of grenades all around through your entire army, which is interesting. He also has a range 3 pistol 1 strength 4 AP 1 damage D6 plague weapon damage 1 versus vehicles pistol, which is really cute, like range 3. But obviously it's a pistol, so you can use it while you're in close combat still. And D6 damage should not be should be something that you have to respect, because if he's going to shoot your character in the face with his pistol, you might die. I mean, it's very unlikely because it doesn't have anything to help him out with the penetration part and whatnot, but if that goes through and you go roll well, somebody might die. It's a very interesting weapon. It's not particularly good, but it has some mean potential if you get very lucky or your opponent gets very unlucky. Whatever you want to take. I don't think he's as good as the other one, because grenades and everything is nice, and the plague knife essentially just gives you a plague weapon, but other than this is nothing. So I would prefer the other one over this one because of the increased chance that he might support your units very well. But you know, if you're running a bunch of units that all have the grenades, maybe it might be worth it. I just don't think so. And another one, Clinic Surgeon, 74 points, so also very cheap. In this case, a apothecary equivalent. Also, there's usual special rules, the usual profile. However, he has reroll once for disgustingly resilient rolls for Death Guard infantry within 3. And that is entirely different to the old Nakithium special rule that the other apothecaries have. So this guy actually helps you preventing wounds instead of healing wounds afterwards. So that's very cool, because obviously the disgustingly resilient rule is a very good one, and almost every guy in your army has it, bear some very weird stuff like Terminator armor, Chaos Lord and Sorcerer, for example, which is, I find really weird. But there is some stuff here that is really tough to remove, and Plague Marines are your bread and butter troop anyway, so it will all affect these guys. And within 3 is not that high of a range, but it's okay because you don't have to target all of them. You just have to be within range with one of your guys, and then your entire unit gets it. So this can be really nice with huge chunks of Plague Marine units, for example. Then he gets +1 to wound and hit rolls when targeting Space Marine infantry or bikers. So essentially he's trying to steal their gene seeds or something like this. But it's okay. A very situational one, but who cares? Then he has a bolt pistol and a base sword, which is essentially a power sword with plague weapon special rule, plague grenades, crack grenades. So very, very standard in themselves. I like it. You would usually only buy him if you have enough guys that can profit from this. And obviously he has to keep up with whatever he's trying to support. Also note, this is only Death Guard infantry. This is not working with tanks or blow drones or something like that. Only works with your usual guys on foot, which is not that much. I mean, you have plenty of infantry all around, but there's very few choices you would actually run and spam over and over again. Alright, then the Tallyman, another guy. This time decreased combat stats, but other than this, same. He is very similar to a Dark Apostle, because he's a Tallyman, and he rerolls hit rolls for Death Guard units within 7 inches in the fight phase. So essentially he is very he's a replacement for the Dark Apostle in the Death Guard army. Then he has a very cute rule that I really like. If you remember, it actually might be pretty good. You roll 2d6 when you use a stratagem, and on a 7, Noggl's number, you get the command points refunded. So that's interesting. To get a 7 is on 2d6 is kind of okayish, but it's still hard to do. It's not a 1 out of 6 or something like this, but pretty hard to do, I think. And obviously you have to remember that one. That is also the more harder part about this. He has a plasma pistol, why not? A break grenades and crack grenades. So he's a little bit weird in the sense he makes your heavy hitting guys much better by re-rolling, for example. but on the other hand, he doesn't offer much else, and he's still his 60 points. Doesn't have any good combat capabilities like a Noxious Blightbringer would do, for example, or I don't know, a lot of Contagion, Typhus. Everybody will have better close combat than he does, obviously. Alright, Deathshroud Terminators, 50 points a pop, and you have to run 3 of them, so they're 50 without any war gear. Now, war gear wise, they have a Man Reaper and the Plague Spirit Gauntlet, which they have to have, so they are 75 points per model. Now let that think in for a second. These guys are essentially walking characters, just in one unit combined with extra weapons and very, very, very few options. They only have very specific war gear that they cannot change, so keep this in mind when you try to run a bunch of Deathshroud Terminators. There will be problems with running more of these in low point cost games. They are very slow, movement 4, even for a slow army they are slow as heck. Weapon skill 3, basic skill 3, strength 5, toughness 5, 2 wounds, 3 or 4 attacks if you are the champion, and leadership 8 or 9 if you're the champion. 2+ save and 4+ invuln, which is Cataphractii Terminator armor. So they will have their advanced rolls. However, they have Teleport Strike being in Terminator armor, so you get to go across the battlefield once, and then you're slow as heck. Everybody can outrun you, basically. And these guys are pretty tough with disgustingly resilient, toughness 5 and 2 wounds, which is nice. And obviously a Man Reaper is a very, very powerful weapon. Gives you, I think, +3 strength, AP 3, and I don't know, he's essentially a very good close combat weapon, very similar to a Power Fist, but a little bit stronger in that sense that you don't have to subtract from your hit rolls, and you get a lot of attacks out with these. Plague Spirit Gauntlet is a pistol, D6, strength 3, AP dash, damage 1 power, not power weapon, plague weapon that auto hits. Is okayish, but strength 3 is obviously garbage, but it helps them with something that Terminators struggle with if they run the normal Terminators. They can deal with halls much better, and their Overwatch is better in that sense. So that is nice because obviously you're gonna get overrun by gaunts and whatnot. For one single Terminator, you can send like 10 guys at him, no problem, for less points. So this deals with that one pretty nicely. The Man Reaper can damage almost anything in close combat unless it has high invuln saves, in which case you have a problem. But that's okay. The interesting thing is they have 2 different abilities to them. They can intercept hit rolls for Death Guard characters within 3. Now that's interesting because we had a different mechanic that allowed other units to either take mortal wounds or just remove models instead of a character. But these guys can intercept the hit rolls, both in shooting and close combat. So you essentially get to use their tankiness for somebody else. Or except, for example, do you want to kill Mortarion or do you want to kill these guys? If there's stuff that Mortarion could tank better, you would take it on him, and if not, you would look outside these to the Death Guard nearby. So the Deathshroud Terminators can do some tanking for your characters, which is interesting. The other thing is Death Guard characters within 3 get attack +1. I'm not sure if I read this correct or if it's the other way around, but I'm pretty sure it says Death Guard characters within 3 get +1. So whatever it is, they gain increased attacks around. That's it. Deathshroud Terminators are really, really, really slow. They're tough to kill, and they have some pretty good answers to what you send at them. However, they still can't deal very well with stuff that just runs away. So all Eldar, all Harlequin, whatnot, everything with high invuln saves and cheesiness will still do very well against them, because the Deathshroud Terminators are very, very few, one of the very few units that can actually deep strike in this codex. keep that in mind. They are pretty much alone in the front because there's not much that can keep up with them. It's some demon engines that can go as fast and black drones and whatnot, but not anything else. So all the buffy guys you have in your back, they won't be there. The only thing that can deep strike in with them is a sorcerer or a lord, and yeah, that's it. That's your options. So if there's something they want to kill, they pretty much have to make the charge, otherwise it's probably going to run away, and be very fine with that because you're investing so much points into a squad like this. 225 points base just for the min amount of units. That's a lot of points for just Terminators. Alright, that's the first one. The second one are the Blightlord Terminators, 38 points, so way cheaper. And they are exactly the opposite in terms of what they can do and what they can do better. First of all, they are slow and whatnot, everything unchanged. They also cataphracti, they also have teleport strike, but you have to take 5 of them. So these guys still cost you a bunch of points if you want to take them at all, but they have very good war gear options. They can take blade launchers, bleak spears, combi weapons, base swords, flame of corruption, biotic axes, reaper autocannons. They pretty much have the options of a plague marine and a normal Terminator, Chaos Terminator in this sense. And then combine this with a bunch of special weapons and combi weapons from the Terminator side. So they can be made into anything you like, and you will pay obviously the points for this. So they will be clocking at, let's say, 45 points average. But their war gear options are huge in terms of what could you do. So whatever the Deathshrouds could not answer, the Blightlord Terminators could try to do this and do the job. And obviously they are still pretty hard to remove since they are Terminators and everything, and they have the same idea. They can intercept what? No, I'm not sure if that is right with the intercept, but they 6+ to wound rolls increase AP +1 for their melee weapons. So they have some extra benefits there. I'm not sure about the intercepting hit. I think it's only for the other ones. I just copy pasted that one. But the rest of it is correct, and they would get the +1. So they have some synergistic effects in close combat, but obviously deep striking, melter and whatnot is a pretty good deal. Alright, now in the fast attack slot, finally we're leaving the big lands of elites and whatnot and get to the vehicle parts. The Myphitic Blight Haulers, 85 points. You can have 1 to 3 of them. They are demonic, which means they have a 5+ in 1 save, and they have great synergy with the Demon Codex psychic powers. They get +1 to hit if you have 3 or more in 1 unit. And they do not get any penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons, which is nice because they have an option to take missile launches and multi-melters, which are both heavy weapons, and this would override their specific disadvantages of having them on a vehicle, which is nice. So this is a non-land raider vehicle that gets to move around with heavy weapons. Lovely. They also have -1 to hit rolls when targeted in the fight phase, which is cool. In terms of toughness, they are toughness 7-8 wounds. Not bad. And the cool thing about them is Death Guard units entirely within 7 inches, so like a custom force field, get cover. So it makes all your units around them much better. The only thing this would not be good with is cultists and poxwalkers, because you have to clump them up really, really badly to get everything within 7 inches. But it's still possible, so you can increase your armor saves very nicely. Obviously, the biggest guys you would take this for is Plague Marines. Other than having no in-1 save, Plague Marines will be very, very tanky with a 2+ armor save essentially, and they don't even require cover, so you can just march across the field and have your Myphitic Blight Haulers do the covering for you instead. They're moving 10, so they can keep up with anything in your army because everything is slow as heck, and these guys get to move and reposition very easily. Interestingly enough, they also can take a Bice Bird, which is Rage 12, which is really nothing compared to the other one. Assault D3, Strength 6, AP 1, Damage 1, also Plague Weapon. I think not as a good an option of the other ones, but a multi-melter, for example, would be pretty handy because it's something that your army lacks is mobile melter guys. You guys are all slow as hell. The only thing that gets into melter range sometimes it would be the Terminators, but even those are slow. So I'm not sure if a multi-melter wouldn't be pretty nice here. They also have a Lashing Maul, which is AP 2, Damage 1, which is nice because they have 3 attacks in general, and they don't drop these attacks because they're not above 10 wounds. And they are decent. They're not like super good in close combat, but they can hold their own, and they would still give you the aura around them if you keep your guys around them, no matter if they're in close combat or not. I like it. It's a very interesting one. It's very. It reminds me very much of a Venom Thrope unit that it moves on with your guys and soaks up damage as the enemy tries to kill it to remove the cover bonus, or they have to ignore it and then deal with the fact that your army gets even more tanky. So I like that. It's a interesting concept. Next thing is the Plague Burst Crawler, 110 points, which is cheap as heck because it is toughness 8, 12 wounds, and it has a 3+ save. So it is pretty tanky in terms of what damage it can take. It is also disgustingly resilient and demonic, so it has a 5+ invuln save and it has a 5+++ save, essentially. So making this wound pool very powerful. So if it doesn't die to less cannons, it's probably not going to die anytime soon, which is really nice. It explodes on a 5+, so it's a little bit more likely to take out you guys as well, because if it explodes, it will hit everybody. And it has some interesting stuff up its sleeve in terms of shooting. It has a Plague Burst Mortar, which is range 12 to 48, so this is a minimum range. You can't shoot before 12, essentially. It's heavy D6, strength 8, AP 2, damage D3, plague weapon. So that's pretty nasty. The only problem is the D6, so it might misfire very hard, but it's still pretty good in that. And then it's a mortar, so it can target non-visible targets, and it shoots very far. I mean, 48 is a great range, so you can take it slow, and you can stay very far back. Your army doesn't move that far, doesn't matter. You're always in range, essentially doing what you want. That's good. I like it. It also has 2 Plague Spitters or 2 Entropy Cannons, which is range 36, heavy 1, strength 8, AP 4, damage D6 for 20 points. Wannabe last cannon with less range and 1 strength less, but still it is on a vehicle that is really tough to remove. It's harder to kill than a Predator by a long shot, which is a direct comparison, obviously, because you have 1 big cannon on top and 2 on the side. Looks like a crawler to me, or looks like a Predator. But a Predator has the same wound pool, but has less toughness, does not have an invuln save, and is not disgustingly resilient. So it's outclassed in every way, I think, at least, by the Plague Burst Crawler. And that's an issue with them. They are actually dirt cheap. If you take the mortar and 2 of the cannons, it's gonna clock at 150 points, and it has more Dagger than a Land Raider, and is still tough as nails, and can be buffed by your army rules to do something, or not even you're not even able to be targeting the thing if they spend the command point, for example. That's a good one. I like it. The Plague Burst Crawler is actually a really good one, and the only issue I don't like about it is it heavily contests the heavy support slots, so you can't actually take Defilers and Predators and so like, because it outclasses them in the shooting aspect so hard. That's something I don't like. It cuts into the versatility of the other choices, but you know, it is a good unit in the end, and if you like the model, kudos to you, it is good. Alright, and that is it. That is everything except Mortarion, which I'll do a separate video about, because I do this all the time when I do the Primax, as I did with Gilliman and the other two guys. The other point is he has some different rules that affect Death Guard in total, so I will have a look at the synergy with his army, or if he's worth taking without a Death Guard army actually, which would be entirely possible, and we will see what he does there. But overall I can say I like the new units. There is some in there that are a little bit shaky, like the their Dark Apostle equivalent and so on, but they all have their place kind of. They don't just have a very strong thing that they can do, and then they have some very weak stuff they can do at the same time. But all these models are cheap. A Dark Apostle is not cheap, was not cheap last edition. Now everything you have here is 70 or 60 points, somewhere in the range, plus war gear, which is really not that much. The only thing that is bloatingly expensive is the Deathshroud Terminators. Those are point sinks as can be. But there are other options. The Plague Marines got buffed in that sense that they are more versatile than ever, and they can be made very powerful. There is a bunch of rules in this codex that would help your Plague Marines do their job better than they did before, and obviously that will make them much more powerful in combination with being run in the Death Guard detachment where they get OBSEC per se. So OBSEC on units that are really hard to remove is obviously a big deal, as seen with the Necron Codex, and these guys are pretty much the same. They are very Necron feeling to me, except they have some better offensive options than the Necrons have, which is a really good point, because no matter how tough you are, at some point you get shot off the board, and this fits pretty nicely into the we deal damage although we are very tanky feeling. Such as the Plague Burst Caller, for example. That's exactly what he does. He is tough to remove, has huge range, good damage. He will chunk your army down, and he will take barely any damage unless you send some very dedicated stuff there. Even Melter Guns will probably not cut it. So I think overall it's a interesting approach. As I said, losing bikers, losing the Havocs is a big deal, and is probably pretty painful for those who bought the models and painted them up. But you can still ally them in if you want to. They just don't get the special rules that the other ones did. So not sure about that one. I'm not sure if it's worth it taking them over something else. But nevertheless, that's it. If you found some errors or something like this, which always happens in these long review stuff, where you have to look into 3 different codexes and compare point costs and whatnot. It takes a lot of time, and sometimes they're sneaking some errors in here. So post them below if you saw some, if you have questions, or if you have suggestions or whatever. And leave a like if you did, and happy wargaming.